Hello, I'm Professor Matthew Rotella, and today's lesson is going to be all about deformers, the bend and the twist deformer in particular. And I want to go over this because deformers of all sorts can be very useful in all sorts of different scenarios. So, to demonstrate the bend deformer, what I'm ultimately going to be making is a wire hanger. Now, if I just go ahead and make a cube and then make a bend deformer on it, so I go to deform and then nonlinear and bend, then what you can see if I go into wireframe view by pressing 4 that the bend deformer is in there, and I can, in my attribute editor, I can adjust its curvature, but it's not going to be doing much bending by default. The reason for that is that there isn't enough geometry information on here, so your subdivisions and your geometry make a big difference on how things deform. So if I were to go back into my original shape here and I give it more subdivisions on the width, you see I get a more subdivisions I have, the more high fidelity bend I get. And then I can go ahead and make it curve, and you can see if I move where the deformer is, it changes how my geometry reacts. Now we're going to use all of this to our advantage when we are making the hanger. And now similarly, if I go ahead and I make a twist deformer, so I go in here, nonlinear twist, and then if I go into my twist deformer and I can change my start angle and my end angle, I can twist it. But also similarly, without any geometry, it doesn't do much. So again, if I go into my cube and go to my tab where I can change my initial attributes, the more subdivisions along the height it has, the more high fidelity of a twist I receive. And similarly to how the bend deformer works, if I move where the deformer is, it changes how my geometry reacts and interacts. And with both the bend and the twist deformer, there is a high bound which controls the boundary of the twist, so anything happening above or below it will react differently, and there's similarly a low bound, so that you can do all sorts of different things with it. Anyway, let's get started. So, like I said, I'm going to be making a wire hanger. I'm going to bring in some reference just to help me with the different shapes that I'm going to be working with. Not that I can't just improvise a wire hanger, but I'll model from reference just because good habits. Anyway, okay, so we got our image of a wire hanger here, and I'm going to start right here, and the reason for that is ultimately because I'm going to mirror it and then use the twist deformer to make this twist right here, and you'll see how that's going to work. Now, you could make this quicker using a NURBS curve extrusion. The only reason that you would really want to make this object this way is if you were really trying to be conservative with how many polygons you have, and you were trying to make a really low geo and keep your geo down. But ultimately, this is mainly just to demonstrate deformers, and you can use these in all sorts of things. Basically, anytime you'd want to make a smooth curve, a bend deformer can be handy. I'll show you how you can progressively move along with everything that you're working with. So, I'm going to start with a cylinder. So I'll just make one there, and then I'll resize this to be roughly the width of my wire. So I'll just scale it down, and you can see I can still stand to be, yeah, that'll be good. And alrighty, so where I'm going to start, I'm going to start right here, and ultimately going to mirror this, and I want it to be pretty close but not quite touching my original origin axis there. So now this is going to be how it breaks down. I'm going to go back to my regular perspective view and vertex, and just to make this a little easier to work with, I'm going to chamfer the vertex, which will allow me to select my bottom faces more easily, like so, if I just click and then shift double click, and then just hold down shift to click the center. Alright, now, basically, I want to extrude it an amount that I'm going to ultimately end up bending. This bend will be pretty short, so I'm going to go like that, and then I'm going to use my insert edge loop tool, which you can find in your mesh tools, and if you want to just put it on your polygon shelf or your poly modeling shelf, you can just middle mouse drag it onto there like I have. I'm going to be using this, and in my tool settings, by default it's going to be set to relative distance from edge, and I want to set it to multiple edge loops, and this is a pretty short bend, so I don't need a whole lot of edge loops in there. I'll just make it 5, and now from here I will select the edges that I'm going to be bending, and I'm going to go Deform, Nonlinear, Bend, and just hit the option box so that I can just tuck this down here and just have it on at the ready. I'll hit Apply. And now if I go into wireframe view, you can see my deformer is in there. And go to my attribute editor and edit the bend. So I want it to curve this way, and I want my high bound to come down, and then I can move it up like so, and perhaps I gave it a little too much geo to work with there, but because I'm cutting into my other bend. But you know what I can do? I can select all of these, actually select all these vertices here. I'll just move these up like so, and you can see that my bend keeps operating on geometry that I told it to operate on, and I can just sort of slink it on up like that, and I basically want it to be at the beginning of the next bend. Now it's going to be a little bit, now right here where we're beginning is going to ultimately be the trickiest part of this whole thing, and my geometry will continue to react to my deformer, so you don't have to do this. You can just have your original geo with a whole ton of deformers attached to it, but just for the sake of making sure that I leave markers for myself, I'm going to duplicate my polygon and then hide the original, because the original will still react, just go like this, the original will still react to my deformer, but my duplicate will not. And like I said, you don't have to make duplicates all the way down like I'm going to be doing, but just for the sake of leaving markers for myself, I'm going to. Ultimately, it's all going to get deleted at the end anyway, but alright. So now I'm gonna make another extrusion out, and then gonna get my insert edge loop tool, and now we're gonna be trucking. Edges, select, I'm gonna select on Q, switch back to my selection tool, select all of these guys and all of these guys. Yeah. Let me see. It's a little bit finicky for this one. Alright, so I'm gonna want all this. I'm gonna want all this and gonna want all of this loop. And then ultimately, what am I missing? I'm gonna be missing this, these, and those. Alright, and that should be all of it. And now, gonna make another bend, and you'll notice my bend will get kind of wonky here, and that's because it'll bend around like the center axis of it, so I need to rotate my bend deformer to sort of match my original geo. And I'm also going to make my high bound not be so wacky and wild. So I'm going to kind of match my center line with my bend deformer, and then go like so, and that matches that curve pretty well. And now ultimately, the reason why we want to use deformers, or the reason why using a deformer is so useful, is that we get such a clean bend, whereas if we were to say just rotate the top face and keep extruding, which I'll demonstrate right now. If we were to just rotate the top face, you'll see that the thickness of our cylinder starts to change, and then we'd have to really finagle with it to keep the thickness of our cylinder, or any geo for that matter, whereas when I use the bend deformer, I'm still keeping this perfect cylinder and it's staying the same thickness all around. And that's really the big advantage of doing this process. So anyway, again, I'm just going to duplicate, hide the original, and proceed. And we're just gonna chug right along. Bing, shift, double click, selects the whole ring, and then extrude down. And I'm gonna say I'm probably gonna want about that length there. And now insert edge loops. I'm gonna want more since I'm dealing with a longer stretch of geo. I'll say 15. Just judging by the looks of things, that's looking pretty good. Press Q, switch back to my selection tool. I'm using the space bar to switch between my orthographs. For anybody who is like, oh no, how is he doing that? He's a magician, a wizard even. I don't mean to. Anyway, select that. Making it bend. Move my curvature. Make my high bound to not ruin me. And then I can just move this right along, curving it more, and you can see how it arcs around whatever I'm using there. So you can see how it arcs around how I move the deformer. And I can just sort of finagle it until it matches that bend pretty much exactly. And that's how I'll just keep on trying. Duplicate it. Hide these two. And I'm moving. Face. Select this. And gonna extrude that. My insert edge loop tool. Well, I'll reduce it a little bit. It's not quite as long. And now edges. Use my selection tool. Select them. Apply a bend deformer. Curvature. It's going to want to bend that way. And I'm going to maneuver this to be on line with my center line. And maybe I'll just go ahead and negative 90, make it totally flat in that rotation. Back to this guy here. Play with my high bound and just maneuver this guy on down. Oh, my other rotations got a little wonky. It would mess me up. Zero those out so my bend stays nice and clean. And just mess around. All right, adjust some values and we're good to go. Okay. And now, yeah, let's keep on trucking. I'm gonna duplicate it. Control D. Shift. Hide that. Now I'm working with this new one. And extrude it. Gonna come down to where the bend starts there, because I have like a little straight zone. And then I'm gonna extrude again. Get the length I need. Insert my edge loops, and this is pretty much the process for most of the body of the hanger. And use my selection tool, go to edges, select all the edges I'm going to want with my marquee. Actually, I suppose what I should try and do is go this way. I'm pretty sure I got them all. I'm not going to be too worried about it for the demonstration, although you might want to make sure that you're being rather specific with your selection. Ooh, definitely don't want that one. Although it doesn't matter too much because I ultimately don't have the deformer changing that area. It's more important that I just get all of these that are on the bottom more so than worry about the ones that are on the top. Okay, regardless, create a bend deformer. Gonna go ahead and rotate it so it matches the center line pretty well, and then bend it. Bend it this way, please. And thank you. Please and thank you. Remember to thank your Maya tools. They're working very hard for you. And there we go. We're matching that pretty well. And again, I mixed up my rotations there. Could have sworn I was grabbing it right, but what are you gonna do? Anyway, that's working pretty well for me. And now we got a big extrusion. Coming up next. So again, I'm gonna duplicate it, so I can have a sort of history. And again, it might even make things easier for you to leave all your deformers active on your one object, but I don't know. I like to just sort of make steps for myself personally. Personal preference, but you do you. All sorts of ways to make things in Maya. Extrude, and here we go. We get all the way down there. And this is ultimately going to mess up my thickness a little bit, this little bit of movement, but just for the sake of matching my reference a little bit better, I will allow it. Alright, so now another bend, and we only got 2 more bends to go, really. We got this one here. Insert edge loop. I'm going to insert like 10-ish. Boop. And edges. Oh, gotta use my selection tool to get the edges I ultimately want. Alright, we should be good to go. Make another bend. And just let me see here. Okay, yep, matching up on my center line, and we bending. Curvature. Whoop. My high bound to be up, and there we go. Just move that on up, and match that up. And now just one last bend, and for the main body of the hanger. Let's see. Control D, duplicate, hide the original, and paste. Cute. And extrude her out. Just make it go like so. Insert edge loops. Insert 15. Back to my selection tool. And edges. Make sure I get them all up yonder. And alright, bend deformer, apply, and match that up, and we're going to be curving. Oh, it's because I messed with this. Edit. Reset settings. Yeah, I want my low bound to be at -1, and I want my high bound to be at 0, and just move it up, and alright, I'll just curve it like that. So it's going to be a little bit straighter than the bent hanger that's in the photo. But now I'm gonna duplicate this, and this is going to be what I end up mirroring. So I'm gonna select this, and now I'm and now what I'm gonna do is to prep this just a little bit because I'm gonna be bridging between this and the mirrored faces. And it's important what you want to mirror isn't, or in this case, it's important that what you want to mirror isn't crossing your mirror border, which is going to be my origin. And you can see by this thick line right down the middle that I am not crossing it, because otherwise it'll merge those together. So, or at least with the settings I have, it would. So I got my mirror options here. I can see by this little guy down here that my current geometry is existing in -x, so I want it to be mirrored into +x. I'm using the world axis as my position. I do want to combine it with the original, and I could turn off do not, and I could change that there, but I just want to, I'll just leave it how it is, it's fine. I'll just hit, and I gotta go into object selection mode, select the object, and mirror. Alright, now I got my mirrored part of the hanger here, and I'm just gonna do a quick bridge between the two. Bridge them. So now it's a little nice and straight. Alrighty. And now it's time to make this top part. Face. It's like this. It's like these guys. Oh, excuse me. And now, I'm going to go ahead and extrude these upwards. So I'm going to extrude, and then at this part here kind of becomes flat again. So then I'll hit extrude again, so it leaves an edge loop there for myself. And now I got the two parts that I'm going to twist together. So I'm going to insert a few edge loops, and twisting is a little bit more heavy duty than bending in the deformation category, so I'm going to have a decent bit more edge loops for it. So I'm going to put 50 in this guy. And now I can just go ahead, go to this orthograph to more easily select all of the edges that I want, and I should be able to just select all of this, and now deform, nonlinear twist. And now is where the magic will kind of happen. And since my deformer is sitting in between these two towers, so to speak, when I change my start angle, or rather I ought just pardon me. When I change my start angle, or in this case I'd probably rather change my end angle, and I can make my high bound not go so high so that it's not twisting up these guys too bad. And I can give them the 3 twists just like in my reference. And the reason why I'm not changing my start angle is so that this, you can see, can start getting real stretchy and weird. So I want that to stay pretty much how it is, and then twist all of this above it, and I can get pretty crazy with it if I want, but I'll keep it relatively conservative with just basically the exact same knots that it has in the reference. And now one thing Now one thing that's pretty cool is you can sort of like take, okay, duplicate this and hide those there. Now one thing that's pretty cool is that you could sort of take deformers in steps. Like if you wanted to have something that twisted and then bends, you can in fact just select all of what you ultimately want to bend, and then you can go ahead and bend it. So if I had wanted this here, this twisted part to be more included in this bend I'm ultimately going to have for this part, I could have, and but let's just finish it off with one final bend. So let's extrude this on up. Let's toss a bunch of edge loops in that bad boy, and now Q for my selection tool. Select all the edges that I want. It's going to be all these guys, and deform, nonlinear, bend. And I would like to bend it this way. My low bound in this case is the one I don't want to mess with, and I can just move this on down and over and match up how my arc should function, and that's that. I'll duplicate this one last time, Control D, and let's see it in with the shaded display, and I'll hide my reference image, and there is our hanger. Our wire hanger, complete with twists and the same thickness all the way around, and it's got these bends that are really nice and smooth because they were handled with the deformer instead of you needing to do it manually. Again, you can get this very similar results with an extruded with faces that were extruded along a NURBS curve, but this functions quite well as well. And then I can throw this into smooth preview even, which will make my ends look a little wonky, but it'll ultimately make my bends look that much smoother even. And yeah, I don't know, can't argue with that. It's a wire hanger, all right. Alright, thanks for watching, and as always, hope you learned.